In 1957, a man named Mr. Wright was dying from advanced lymph node cancer. His body had almost completely surrendered to the disease. Massive tumors spread across his body. His organs were failing. His immune system was collapsing. Doctors believed he only had a few painful days left to live. But then Mr. Wright heard about a new experimental drug called Krebiozen. Newspapers were calling it a miracle breakthrough. Desperate for survival, he begged his doctors for a single injection. He believed with absolute certainty that this drug could save his life. Out of sympathy, the doctors finally agreed. They gave him the injection on a Friday, expecting him to die by Monday. But when the medical staff returned to his room days later, something shocking had happened. Mr. Wright was no longer lying helpless in bed. He was standing, walking, breathing normally. According to reports from the physicians involved, his tumors had dramatically shrunk within days. His condition improved so rapidly that he eventually left the hospital. But then the story took a disturbing turn. A later medical report claimed the drug was ineffective. The moment Mr. Wright lost faith in the treatment, his condition rapidly worsened again. This case became one of the most famous examples of the placebo effect ever recorded, a phenomenon where belief itself can create measurable physical changes inside the body. And that raises a terrifying question. If belief can influence the biology of a dying man, then how much of your own life is being controlled by the invisible expectations inside your mind right now? Because modern neuroscience suggests something deeply unsettling, your brain is not simply reacting to reality. It is constantly shaping the reality you are able to experience. We are taught from childhood that success is mostly about action. Work harder. Wake up earlier. Push yourself further. And yes, effort matters. But what if one of the biggest drivers of human performance is not physical effort alone, but what your brain subconsciously expects to happen? At first, that idea sounds like motivational nonsense. Just believe in yourself. It sounds simplistic, unrealistic, maybe even naive. But behind laboratory doors, neuroscientists and psychologists have spent decades studying how expectation influences human behavior, biology, and performance. And what they discovered is fascinating. Belief is not magic. It does not break the laws of physics. But belief does influence attention, stress response, motivation, decision-making, endurance, confidence, and even certain biological processes. In other words, your expectations quietly shape the limits your brain allows you to operate within. And most people never realize how much control those invisible expectations have over their lives. Your brain does not experience objective reality directly. It experiences your interpretation of reality. That distinction changes everything. When you deeply believe something is possible, your brain often becomes more focused, more persistent, and more resilient under stress. But when you believe failure is inevitable, your brain begins conserving energy and avoiding risk. Stress hormones rise. Confidence drops. Creative thinking weakens. You hesitate more. You notice fewer opportunities. And eventually, your behavior starts validating the very belief that created the problem in the first place. This is one reason belief can become a self-fulfilling cycle, and one experiment at Stanford University demonstrated this perfectly. In 2011, Stanford researcher Dr. Alia Crum conducted a fascinating study published in Health Psychology. Participants were given a milkshake. Half the group received a label describing it as a rich, high-calorie indulgent shake. The other half received a label describing it as a low-calorie diet shake. But both groups drank the exact same milkshake. Researchers then measured levels of ghrelin, a hormone associated with hunger and appetite. The results were remarkable. The people who believed they had consumed the indulgent shake showed a significantly stronger drop in ghrelin levels. Their bodies responded differently based largely on what they believed they had consumed. Not because belief magically changed reality, but because expectation influenced the body's physiological response. That finding challenged the idea that our biological systems respond only to objective physical input. Sometimes, perception changes the experience itself, and this principle extends far beyond food. Think about how many times fear has stopped you from even trying. How many opportunities did you avoid because your mind convinced you failure was guaranteed before you even began? Most people assume their limits are objective. But often, those limits are psychological predictions disguised as logic. Your brain constantly tries to protect you from uncertainty, rejection, embarrassment, and pain. And sometimes, in trying to protect you, it quietly keeps you trapped. Your brain processes enormous amounts of information every second. Far too much for conscious awareness. So the brain relies on a filtering system called the Reticular Activating System, often shortened to the RAS. The RAS helps determine what reaches your conscious attention. And here's the important part. Your beliefs influence what your brain considers important. If you constantly tell yourself, people like me never succeed, there are no opportunities, I'm not capable enough, your brain begins filtering the world through that expectation. You unconsciously focus more on rejection, failure, and limitation. But when your expectations change, your attention changes too. And one famous experiment demonstrated how dramatically attention can shape perception. In 1999, psychologists Christopher Chabris and Daniel Simons conducted the now famous invisible gorilla experiment. Participants watched a video of people passing basketballs and were asked to count the passes. While they focused on counting, a person in a gorilla suit walked directly through the scene, stopped, beat their chest, and walked away. A huge number of participants never noticed the gorilla at all. Not because they forgot it, because their attention was focused elsewhere. Their brains filtered it out. And that is what happens psychologically when people become trapped inside limiting beliefs. They stop seeing possibilities that do not match the story they already believe. Opportunities may exist directly in front of them, but their minds are no longer trained to notice them. This is why two people can live in the exact same environment and experience completely different realities. One person sees possibility. The other sees defeat. One notices connections, ideas, opportunities, and growth. The other notices obstacles, rejection, and reasons to quit. And over time, those different perceptions create different lives. In 1968, researchers Robert Rosenthal and Lenore Jacobson conducted a famous study sometimes called the Oak School experiment. Teachers were told that certain randomly selected students had exceptional academic potential. In reality, those students had been chosen completely at random. But over time, many of those students actually showed greater academic improvement. Why? Because the teachers unconsciously treated them differently. They gave them more encouragement, more patience, more attention. This became known as the Pygmalion Effect. Higher expectations can influence better performance. But the reverse can also happen. Negative expectations can lower confidence, increase anxiety, and reduce performance. Which means the people surrounding you matter more than most realize. The beliefs constantly projected onto you can slowly shape the beliefs you begin projecting onto yourself. If you spend years around people who constantly tell you that success is impossible, eventually your brain may stop trying. Not because you truly lack potential, but because your environment slowly trained you to expect failure. This is why protecting your mindset matters. For years, Experts believed it was physically impossible for a human being to run a mile in under 4 minutes. Some even argued the human body simply could not tolerate it. Then, in 1954, a medical student named Roger Bannister broke the barrier. He ran the mile in 3 minutes and 59.4 seconds. And then, something fascinating happened. Soon after Bannister proved it could be done, other runners began doing it too. The physical capabilities of humanity had not suddenly evolved overnight, but psychologically, the impossible had become possible. A mental barrier had collapsed, and when belief changes, behavior changes with it. This pattern appears constantly throughout human history. Most people never test the limits of their potential because they surrender before they begin. They assume they are not smart enough, not talented enough, not confident enough. So they never take the actions that could have changed everything. Self-doubt can feel strangely safe. Because if you convince yourself success is impossible, you never have to risk failure. One of the most important discoveries in psychology came from Stanford psychologist Carol Dweck. In her research on mindset, she discovered that people generally approach challenges in 2 different ways. A fixed mindset believes abilities are permanent. Failure feels personal. Mistakes feel like proof of inadequacy. But a growth mindset views skills as improvable through learning, adaptation, and persistence. Highly successful people are not people who never fail. They are usually people who recover from failure faster. They do not interpret setbacks as proof that they are worthless. They interpret setbacks as part of the process. That mindset changes behavior. And behavior repeated consistently changes outcomes. Your beliefs influence what you notice, what you attempt, how long you persist, how you respond to setbacks, and ultimately, the direction your life moves in. If you believe you are powerless, your brain often behaves accordingly. But if you train yourself to believe growth is possible, your mind begins searching for pathways instead of excuses. That does not guarantee success overnight. But it changes the way you move through reality itself. And sometimes, that changes everything. Because the greatest limitation in your life may not be your circumstances. It may be the invisible story your mind has repeated for so long that you started mistaking it for truth. If this video changed the way you think about your own mind, subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with one belief you need to stop carrying. Because the moment you change the story inside your head, you may begin changing the direction of your entire life.
This is Layer of Strength, where small beginnings build powerful legacies.